How is it possible in the richest cities on Earth to have people sleeping under concrete overpasses while entire towers stand dark and silent? In one frame, a man wraps himself in a blanket beneath a highway, traffic roaring above him. In the next, the camera glides through a marble lobby, past elevators that lead to apartments no one lives in. This is the housing paradox hiding in plain sight. Not a story of simple shortage, but of abundance locked away. Across global cities, the pattern repeats. More buildings, more capital, more construction, and yet fewer places ordinary people can afford to call home. We will not pin this to a single number because the data is fragmented and contested. Instead, we ask the deeper question: who benefits from homes that never turn on their lights? A housing crisis in the modern sense is not simply about not building enough homes. It is about a collision between shelter and finance, housing as a place to live, to rest, to raise a family, versus housing as an asset, a balance sheet entry, a vehicle for storing and multiplying wealth. When prices rise far beyond incomes, price is no longer a signal of need, it becomes a signal of capital. To understand how we arrived here, we have to rewind. After the financial crisis of 2008, central banks across advanced economies held interest rates low for years. Money became cheap, borrowing became easy, and long-lived assets were suddenly worth much more on paper. Homes, with their durability and scarcity in dense cities, fit perfectly into that logic. Then came the shock of the coronavirus disease era. Disrupted supply chains, remote work, shifting demand across neighborhoods, and a surge in the cost of living. Rents climbed, prices jumped, and the gap between wages and housing widened again. The mechanism is deceptively simple. When interest rates are low, future income is discounted less. That pushes up the value of assets that can sit quietly over time. Housing stops being judged by how well it houses people and starts being judged by how well it preserves value. In that world, an empty apartment can be more profitable than an occupied one. This analysis applies most clearly to highly urbanized economies with deep capital markets and housing tied tightly to credit and investment flows. It does not fully apply to places torn by war or natural disaster, where homes are destroyed and the priority is survival and rebuilding. And that leads us forward. If housing is a basic human need, why does the system reward treating it like a financial instrument instead? After the financial crisis of 2008, housing quietly crossed a line. It stopped being treated primarily as shelter and began to circulate as a global investment instrument. Interest rates stayed low for years, liquidity flooded the system, and capital went hunting for assets that could hold value in an uncertain world. On trading floors, lines on screens drifted downward, policy rates near zero, bond yields compressed. In response, money looked elsewhere. It found cities. In so-called safe urban markets, apartments began to resemble vaults, concrete and steel, legally protected, politically stable, resistant to inflation. When currencies weakened, when sovereign bonds swung, when geopolitical tension made headlines, properties stood still. It did not need to produce anything, it only needed to exist and wait. This is where incentives begin to matter. For an investor, the decision is rarely emotional. It is a comparison: rent minus maintenance, appreciation over time, legal risk from tenant protections, tax treatment, vacancy controls. In some jurisdictions, the math bends in a counterintuitive direction. A rented home carries friction, wear and tear, regulation, eviction risk, political backlash. An empty one does not. It sits quietly, preserving optionality, a safety deposit box with windows. None of this requires a conspiracy. It emerges from structure. When long-term assets are priced higher because money is cheap, and when housing is easily financialized through funds, trusts, and cross-border vehicles, The system begins to reward ownership over use. Keeping a unit dark can outperform keeping it lived in on a risk-adjusted basis. We should be careful with precision here. The exact scale of global capital flows into real estate varies by country and year and requires verification from institutions like the Bank for International Settlements and the International Monetary Fund. But the direction of travel is visible. Housing has been pulled into the orbit of global finance. So the camera lingers, a glowing stock exchange, charts pulsing in green and red, then a hard cut, pristine apartment, no shoes by the door, no dishes in the sink, no light behind the curtains, not abandoned, just parked. Empty homes are not always the result of speculation. In many places, they are the residue of demographic drift, people moving, aging, and leaving buildings behind in the wrong places. The camera pulls back from finance and zooms into population maps, fading colors across entire regions. In Japan, the story is slow and quiet. The country is aging, shrinking, and concentrating. Young people stream toward a handful of metropolitan centers, while rural towns thin out year after year. Houses remain where families once lived, but heirs are gone, jobs are gone, and the local economy has withered. These structures are not held as investments in the classic sense. They are stranded. Over time, they turn into what locals call abandoned homes, akiya. The exact scale shifts with definitions and surveys and requires confirmation from official Japanese statistical agencies, but the pattern itself is no longer disputed. China tells a different story, faster and louder. For years, rapid urbanization and construction were engines of growth. New districts rose on the edges of cities, built for the future population that planners and developers expected to arrive. In some cases, that demand came later. In others, it never fully arrived. Apartments were sold before people moved in, often as stores of value tied to expectations of rising prices. Measuring vacancy here is complex and politically sensitive and must rely on careful academic work and national statistical sources. But the visual reality remains. Rows of high-rises, finished, occupied on paper, yet glowing with only a handful of lights at night. These are different mechanisms, but they share a result. Housing ends up in the wrong place for the wrong people at the wrong time. It is critical to draw a boundary here. Not every empty home is hoarded. Some are empty because the jobs left, the trains stopped running, or the buildings themselves no longer meet modern needs. The camera tracks commuters flooding a central station at dawn, then cuts wide. A distant residential block. Elevators hum. Windows stay dark. To understand why empty homes persist, we have to follow incentives and the quiet power structures built around them. In many cities, local governments are not neutral referees. Their budgets lean heavily on land values, development fees, and property-related revenue. When asset prices rise, balance sheets look healthier. When prices fall, holes appear. In that environment, policies drift toward protecting valuation first, occupancy second. Behind the scenes, zoning meetings unfold under fluorescent lights. Permits are debated, density caps adjusted. Each decision looks technical, incremental, but together they shape who can build, who can buy, and who can afford to stay. A system emerges where keeping prices high is framed as stability, and affordability becomes a secondary concern, postponed to the next cycle. Large owners operate under a different logic. Institutional investors, real estate funds, and consolidated landlords think in portfolios, not neighborhoods. Their goal is not monthly rent alone, but long-term asset performance. Vacancy becomes a tool. By controlling usable supply, even partially, they gain pricing leverage. Risk is managed through scale, legal teams, and diversification. An empty unit can be a strategic asset, a buffer against regulation, a bet on appreciation, a way to wait out political pressure. This is soft power, not conspiracy. Planning rules, building standards, access to credit, and tax treatment open doors for some actors while quietly closing them for others.
The market does not simply allocate homes, it allocates advantage. Here is the hard judgment. When an economy treats housing as a pillar of wealth creation, policy and markets will instinctively defend prices before they defend access. Too many retirement plans, municipal budgets, and investment models depend on rising values. The system learns what to protect. The consequences land quickly. Within 30 to 90 days, renters face impossible trade-offs: longer commutes, higher debt, broken childcare networks, another forced move. The camera cuts from a planning room to a small apartment, boxes stacked again, a child asking which school comes next. The consequences surface first in the lives of the young, quietly, then all at once. When housing costs consume a growing share of income, people delay marriage, delay children, delay roots. Life enters a suspended state, a permanent maybe. Internal migration accelerates, not toward opportunity, but away from rent. The fixed cost of shelter crowds out everything else. Statistical agencies across advanced economies point to the same direction of travel, even if the exact numbers still require careful cross-checking. Fertility down, household formation slower, mobility forced rather than chosen.
In the United States, the mechanism is blunt. Housing sits at the center of a powerful credit and asset system. Rising prices inflate household balance sheets, unlock borrowing, and widen the gap between owners and renters. A home is not just a place to live, it is collateral. Those without it fall behind, not once, but every year prices climb. The skyline of New York glows at night, while young workers share smaller spaces or leave altogether. Germany offers a different architecture. Renting is more common, protections are stronger, and long-term tenancy is culturally normalized. This does not eliminate pressure, but it distributes it differently. Prices still rise in major cities, supply still lags demand. The difference lies in how shock is absorbed. Stability is built into contracts, not ownership. It is not a perfect model, just a different one. Japan carries the paradox to its extreme. Rural towns hollow out as the population ages. Homes sit empty, roofs collapsing in silence. Yet Tokyo remains expensive, dense, and fiercely competitive. Empty and unaffordable coexist, not as opposites, but as products of the same demographic and economic currents. These comparisons have limits. Culture, law, planning, and family structure matter. The lesson is not that one country solved it, it is that each system expresses the same tension between housing as a social foundation and housing as an asset to be defended. There is no single fix for a housing crisis built over decades, only policy choices, each with a price tag written in economics and politics. One option often returns to the table is a tax on empty homes. The idea is simple: pull housing back toward use, away from pure storage. In cities that have experimented with this tool, the intention was not punishment, but pressure, a nudge to turn dark windows into lived-in rooms. But design matters. Set it wrong, and costs slide quietly onto renters, not owners. The mechanism must be precise, or the cure repeats the disease. Another path runs through social and public housing, the slowest and arguably the most structural solution. This requires land, long-term capital, and governance capacity that can survive election cycles. It does not rescue a market in crisis overnight. It rebuilds the floor beneath it, over years, not months. From here, three futures emerge. In a scenario of deep reform, political pressure aligns with economic stress, and governments accept short-term pain to stabilize long-term access. In partial reform, measures are symbolic. Prices cool briefly, then resume their climb. In the status quo, nothing breaks until something does. What unlocks change is not ideology, it is interest rates, recession risk, voter anger,
and the moment when housing costs stop being a complaint and become a crisis of legitimacy. In the end, housing is not just an economic variable, it is a moral mirror. When homes are treated primarily as vaults for value, society pays in quieter currencies: trust, family stability, the ability to imagine a future. Asset prices can rise while social foundations erode, and the graphs will still look healthy. But a resilient economy is not measured only by what properties are worth. It is measured by how securely ordinary people can live. The question lingers after the lights go out. Does the market exist to serve people, or have people been reorganized to serve the market? So pause here. In the next 7 days, choose just one action, then stop. Calculate your housing cost as a share of after-tax income and set a personal warning line. Or review your lease or loan, note the renewal date and define a backup plan. Or map 3 realistic places you could move if forced. Then close the tab and do not doom scroll further.